Welcome to our live playoff preview edition of the Minnesota Basketball Party. Will the Wolves sweep? Will the Wolves be swept? Will we avoid the pessimism that's infiltrated Timberwolves Nation? Next on the Basketball Party.
This is Locked On Sports Minnesota podcast. It's endless Minnesota Timberwolves talk with the diverse voices of your local experts. It's time for the Minnesota Basketball Party on the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Welcome in to the Minnesota Basketball Party. It's Wolves Talk every Wednesday on Locked On Sports Minnesota. Thank you so much for watching us live. Please subscribe to the channel. Help us get to 8,000 subscribers. Thanks for watching us after the fact. We are available on demand. We're also available on Amazon Fire and Roku to watch us. And you can listen to us on the Locked On Wolves podcast feed, where Ben Beacon produces wonderful daily shows, or the Sirius XM app as well. It's playoff preview day. Wolves and Suns begin 2:30 Central on Saturday. We'll talk about how the regular season ended with a thud, how the Wolves draw the Suns, a team they haven't beaten yet this year. We will preview the series, how they can change things around, and the most important players to the Timberwolves in this best of seven. But let's meet our panel with this morning's opening tip.
I'm Jack Borman, editor-in-chief of Canis Hoopus, co-host of the Locked On Wolves postcast with my man Luke Inman. And I'm going to talk a little bit why I think the Suns are a more difficult team to play in a single-game setting than they are over the course of a 7-game series.
Reggie Wilson, Carol 11 sports director. And for some reason, this feels kind of like the Vikings and Giants last January.
And I'm Ron Johnson, former Gophers and NFL wide receiver, avid basketball fan, avid basketball player, recreational at that. I quit in high school, but I do love a good basketball game. And I'm going to explain to you why everybody might want to get your sunglasses. Please don't stare too closely and do not stare directly at the Suns. Don't do it. But also, I'm wearing a shirt for a reason. It's time for them to figure out where Captain America is, because they're going to need a leader out there on that floor.
I've still got my Eclipse glasses from last week's Eclipse run. I should dig those out. Didn't want to stare at the TV too hard last Sunday when the Wolves played the Suns, a 125-106 loss as Minnesota fell to the 3 seed. It was such a tease. Friday's win against the Hawks, coupled with the Nuggets' loss to the Spurs, such a tease. Some people thought they were in the 1 seed then. They weren't. They were in the 2 seed, 3-way tiebreaker nonsense. But the Wolves, with a win, could have been the 2. They end up the 3. They play the Suns, who worked their way out of the play-in round. It's the matchup that nobody was really looking forward to, Jack Borman, and everything broke the wrong way for the Wolves on Sunday. You had hope of the 1, and you end up being the 3, and oh yeah, you play the Phoenix Suns. Not the way people wanted it to go.
Yeah, certainly not. And I think the most frustrating part of it was that, you know, it felt different than that game in Phoenix did, where, you know, you said after that Phoenix game, you just said, okay, you know, you had a loss to burn, because if you beat Denver, then you've got this inside track for the 1 seed. You can then beat Denver on Wednesday. You can beat Atlanta, who will have nothing to play for on Friday, and then you're the 1 seed, and then you're good. And then all of a sudden the Nuggets lose, and then this game is thrust into this, you know, kind of added importance, and the Timberwolves just weren't ready for it. And I think the Timberwolves probably had a little bit of, you know, thinking it was sweet playing at home. They have Cat back. They're being a little bit more confident. They don't feel as though they need to pay quite as close attention to some of the details. And it showed. They were really sloppy in this game. They had 24 turnovers for a season-high 35 opponent points off of turnovers. And I think what was most disappointing to me was that the 2 stars were nowhere to be found in this game. Karl Anthony Towns and Anthony Edwards had a combined 23 points on, I believe, 6 of 15 shooting, and they had 10 turnovers between the 2 of them. It would have been one thing if, you know, one guy had a bad game and the other guy was kind of there to pick him up. But the fact that both of them kind of laid an egg in this one was really tough. And then when you look off the bench, normally Naz Reid is that guy that all season has been able to make up for, you know, one of the 2 or one of the 3 guys in the starting lineup, you know, really not having a great scoring night. And then Naz again kind of put forth his third stinker of the season against the Suns, which has kind of been the case for some of the other Timberwolves players this year as well. So it certainly didn't inspire a lot of confidence, but I think the good news about it is that when you're playing a team like Phoenix, right, they're a team that has shown an ability to really flip the switch and turn it on for individual games. But if you go through and you look at their schedule and you look at some of these teams that they've played, that they've beaten, they've had 2 or 3 really impressive wins in a row, and then they'll lose to like San Antonio without Victor Wembanyama at home. This team just has a really difficult time maintaining that level of intensity over the course of a second, a third, a fourth, a fifth game. And the thing about the Timberwolves as well is that, in these 3 games, they've been terrible in the first quarter. And I think they've been all right in the final 3 quarters. It's been much closer from there on. So, the more that the Timberwolves can find that level of play where they can just get past the first quarter and get past maybe some of the nerves or whatever it may be and just play basketball, they'll be all right. They started to gain plenty of momentum in the second quarter and the third quarter with, playing defense and finding some success on Devin Booker and Kevin Durant. And I think that if they, just lean into the defensive end of the ball and just really focus on what they need to be focusing on and not allowing so many wide open 3-point attempts, I think they're going to be okay. But the good news is that you get it out of your system in game 82, right? I think if you turn around and you win game 1 on Saturday afternoon at Target Center, I don't think anybody is going to be really caring all that much about game 82 or the other 2 Suns losses.
Yeah, that would help a whole lot to ease the nerves. And there's a lot of unsustainable stuff happening, I think, in these first 3 losses. Like, these are the first quarter scores. At some point during the first quarters, they trailed in the 3 losses 32-18, 44-22, and 15-0. You can't possibly start that badly every game of a 7-game series. It's going to get better, right, Reggie? It's going to get better than this.
Why are you asking me, Sam? Shoot, I don't know. No.
It has to get better.
Please,
it has to.
Encourage me.
So, look, here's the thing, and this is what kind of concerned me. So, look, I'm from St. Louis. I love me some Bradley Beal. That's my dude. But, like, he went off for 36, and it's like, if all 3 of these guys are going to have games, like, that just makes it very, very difficult. What was tough about this game was Kevin Durant only had 15 points. Only 15 points on 6 of 14 shooting. He played 38 minutes. And you're like, okay, that's Kevin Durant, though. Like, you would expect him to get his and Booker to get his. But if Beal is going to go off for 36 points, like, that's just going to be a tough situation. They gave Grayson Allen 4 years and $70 million the other day. Like, that is insane. That's insane. So I guess the one thing that I would hope happens is, there was so much about Cat getting back before the season ended so that he could get some time to get some legs underneath him before the playoffs start. And what you hope is that he was able to kind of feel his way and try to maybe start the playoffs with a little bit of momentum as opposed to, just starting cold. You got a situation where, with Milwaukee, Giannis may or may not even play in that whole first round. And then if he does go out there, you kind of wonder how effective he's going to be. It's not that type of a situation with Cat. And so I think you would hope that they could kind of find a little bit of a rhythm. The tough part about the Wolves is they've been an offensive clunky team all season. And so you just kind of hope that maybe they can kind of figure some things out and get it together. But this Suns team is not your usual 6 seed. Like, they got 3 bona fide superstars on that team. And I think that's what makes it so difficult to think about. The Wolves are going to have to play their best performance. I think I was talking to one of my coworkers in the newsroom last night, and there are no like cupcake first round games. Like, usually there's a series where you're like, okay, this team is clearly better than this team. And the Wolves had a great season. And that's why, as Ron would say, paying off the tees. I remember that Vikings season, not this past season, but the last one, where, they had all these close victories and just had a fantastic year. And then it just fizzled and came to a thud in that opening playoff game against the Giants. Daniel Jones just ran all over them. And it was just like, you blinked and it was like, dang, it's over. Like, that's it. As great of a season as it was, it's over. And this kind of has that feel. And I know, Sam, you were telling me to try to help you believe, but it's kind of hard for me to believe. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Like, this just kind of has that feel. You didn't see anything from the first 3 games against the Suns to make you feel like this is going to be as competitive of a series as you want. Like, I would love to be wrong. I would love to continue to cover this basketball team into the second, third round of the playoffs, but they didn't give you anything to make you believe like, okay, yeah. Like with that Vikings team, you were like, man, that defense is gonna let them down at some point. And then Daniel Jones just ran all over them, just throwing it all across the field on their home turf and knocked them out of the playoffs.
It would be disappointing if the Wolves defense did the same thing. That would be a bummer. And Donatel shows up to orchestrate things.
Yeah, that's not what you want. But like, if you could see some of the similarities, I feel like that's just kind of how it feels, and I hope that the feeling is wrong.
Yeah, Ron, you've been nervous about the Suns for a long time now, and I think you were right to be nervous.
Well, since I got to stare into the sun right now, let me go ahead and put the glasses on. So here's where I go with the Suns, and this is why I said this. What people don't understand about hoopers from like Chicago, East St. Louis, Detroit, New York, it's a different mindset. And that's what Bradley Beal brought to this team. Like, he brought a different mindset. And although they couldn't always get it together, because Devin Booker is light-skinned. And for those that don't understand what that means, just imagine the rapper Drake. And any confrontation, it gets weird. And that's what Devin Booker gives you. It gets weird with him sometimes, where like him and Klay Thompson might have been the weirdest interaction of argument ever, where it was like, you're losing, but your comeback is, I've been beating you for 10 years. Or, you know what? You like Kylie Jenner. Shut up. Like, that's the kind of arguments light-skinned dudes have. And so when you think about Bradley Beal, he kind of created this different mindset. And then you add Grayson Allen, who is an absolute jerk. Good for him, but he's a jerk. And he's added that to that team. It reminds me of the Pistons a little bit, with a little bit of tripping, a little bit of elbowing, a little bit of bumping, a little bit of stuff that the refs don't call, but it agitates the team. And so why I say, one, don't look directly into the Suns. Don't worry about, as Sam would say, the eclipse. You're going to have the sun and Devin Booker, and then he's eclipsed by Kevin Durant, a much taller, bigger, darker fella. And so when you see those two, you can't look directly at them. It's like Rick James with the aura that Dave Chappelle explained. Like, you just get lost. And so with the Timberwolves, one, they can't worry about those two. They got to dominate everywhere else they can. Kevin Durant's going to get his, or Devin Booker. One of the two is going to go off. And you can't stop it. And that's what's so scary. And then if they're off, Bradley Beal takes off. And if he's off, Grayson Allen takes off. And so they just have a barrage of guys they could throw at you. That's the only reason I was worried about it. I feel like the Lakers are old. Sorry, Reggie. The Warriors showed us last night against the Kings. They just don't have it anymore. Like, as long as you've dominated this league, it's over. And the Kings, to me, I mean, the Warriors had a chance. You look at the Lakers and the Pelicans, they both had a chance to win. So I wanted any of those teams other than this one. But if they beat the Suns, here's the kicker. They now create an easier, not an easier path, but they get rid of one of the tougher teams that everybody was worried about. And I think that's the next step to this. If you want to be a champion, you got to beat everybody anyway. So you might as well take out one of the Giants. And if they can take out the Giant and the Suns and Kevin Durant and Devin Booker, they get a new mentality. I mean, think about Captain America paying off the tees, how he had to go on his own at one point and then came back and got the team together. Karl-Anthony Towns is coming back. I don't know if he is like one of the Avengers that Anthony Edwards had to go get. I don't know. But I do know that Rudy Gobert is Groot. We can end that there. If you're wondering who they all are in this, Rudy Gobert is Groot. So let's move on from there. But I just think for the Suns, I didn't want this team. They are a scary team. And so I hope the Timberwolves can find a captain to just kind of, maybe it's Mike Conley as Captain America. Like he's going to get everybody together, but they have to be able to be efficient at all times. If you watch the Lakers game, the Lakers down the stretch were not efficient. And that's why the Pelicans almost won that game.
Yeah, that was a great one last night. If the Wolves had been the 2, they would have played LA based on last night's
And
result.
that's what I wanted. I wanted LeBron in his old self. Come on.
LeBron couldn't make a layup last night. His legs were so tired.
Oh, man.
Reggie's rolling his eyes. Kat talked about embracing playing the best and beating the best, and the Wolves are not going to have an easy path to make the NBA Finals. They would have to beat the Suns, probably the Nuggets. Sorry, Reggie. And then possibly OKC. 3 grinded out series that they absolutely are going to go 6 or 7 games. More on the Suns Wolves matchup when we return on the Minnesota Basketball Party. Brought to you today by Nissan. Are you the kind of driver that likes to push things a little further? Ever wonder what adventure could be or what next adventure could be around the corner? Well, our friends at Nissan have a lineup of SUVs with the capabilities to take your adventure to the next level. The 2024 Nissan Rogue is perfect for city drives, but also great escapes. Class exclusive Google built-in, so you're always updating assistant to call on for almost anything because we don't like to be separated from our devices. Gone are the days of connecting your phone, Google Assistant, Google Maps, Google Play Store. They're all built in to a 12.3-inch HD touchscreen. The Rogue is the perfect midsize crossover for that next adventure. Or the 2024 Nissan Armada will change what you expect from a full-size SUV. Picture a rugged 4x4 that seats up to 8 in first-class luxury. You can tow bigger and explore further in the 2024 Armada. Take the Rogue, the Armada, or the Nissan Pathfinder and go find your next big adventure. Shop NissanUSA.com. We're also brought to you by Ron Johnson's favorite game, Monopoly Go. And we've all been there when you're a player or a fan or a Monopoly Go enthusiast. It's halftime. Scoreboard's not looking good. You're feeling down. You're feeling low. You're not sure you can dig your way out of this hole. But then you lift your head up and say, time to get back in the game and pull off some bank heists and take some of my friends' money. That's what happens with Monopoly Go, the smash hit mobile game. It lets you compete with your friends and get the most riches and the biggest empire. The Monopoly you love, but it's on your phone anytime with tons of twists, including leaderboards to compare your progress with your buddies. There's so much to do. Play on countless dynamic Monopoly boards. Make your friends bankrupt by smashing their landmarks with a wrecking ball. Charge other players rent for your iconic properties. You can work with your friends to crack open community chests in tournaments and get extra rewards to climb that leaderboard. Go out there now. Put on your game face. Download Monopoly Go free on the App Store or Google Play. All right, quick take. I want a minute on this, and then we'll talk more Wolves Suns. Cat played 2 games before the end of the season. Hawks game, Suns game. Combined, shot 7 of 19, 2 of 10 from 3, scored 21 points over 2 games. Give me a 1 through 10, Reggie, on Cat's return to the lineup. 10 being, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. 1 being, I don't even know, Nemanja Bjelica. I have no idea what. Give me a number.
Thought one was like Luke Bamute or something. I don't know. I'll go 7. I'll go 7. I think it's good to see him back out there. I think he's knocking some rust off. But I think he's still not there yet as far as like impacting a game in the way that they need him to. You hope to see that moving forward in the playoffs.
Mm-hmm. Okay, Ron.
What's the numbers again?
It was a bad rating system. 10 is a Hall of Fame return, and 1 is like Johnny Flynn. Think of a lot of lackluster Timberwolves. That would be the number 1.
So for Cat's return, what I feel like the reason I'm not going to put it too high, I think his return is imperative. Like, we know his size, his ability to rebound, that additional person that can score. Because when one guy is not, like, I always look at the box score at halftime. or even at the end of games. And I'm looking for like who was the 30-point guy, and then who followed up with like a 19 to 22 point performance within that, game. And it was lacking in some of these losses to the Suns. I think Karl Anthony Towns is that guy. So in that aspect of this moment versus the Suns, I say his impact needs to come back at like a 9. It needs to feel like LeBron is getting Anthony Davis back. And that's what, like, when Anthony Davis goes out for anything, like if you cut Anthony Davis's nails and he gets a manicure, there's a chance he's missing the next game. Like, he's just that fragile. If you pat him on the butt, you might break his hip. So this is what
for, Ron. Uncalled for.
I'm just saying, Reggie, come on now. You watch those games, every time there's any little like rebound grouping, Anthony Davis is coming out of there limping.
I'm not saying you're wrong. Just you so loud. Why are you so loud about it?
I'm sorry. I just noticed when LeBron took that charge from Zion, I thought Anthony Davis was going to go out. Like that's the type of impact Anthony Davis's injuries give me. Like LeBron's elbow was hurting, and Anthony Davis was going to walk out. But for Cat to come back, like it does feel like it needs to be that Anthony Davis walking back onto the court, or Paul Pierce having to go poop and coming back moment. Like it needs to, like this playoff moment for him back. He needs to really like insert himself into this offense, give Anthony Edwards like that extra feeling, give Rudy Gobert like, hey, we are the Twin Towers. It does need to be there. If it was like some of the regular season games when he came back, that was more of like Dante DiVincenzo or whatever his name is, if he went out and came back, like that's what it felt like earlier because they were already winning without him. So it didn't feel as big. Now, seeing that they have the Suns, it feels like a big moment.
Yeah. Jack, you were at the 2 games, I believe, that Cat returned. What'd you think of his performances?
Yeah, I was at the first one, not the second one, but yeah, I'd give it like a 4. First of all, crazy stray for Belly to catch.
First name that popped in my head.
Yeah,
I might. You know what? I was searching. I think for Darko Milicic, and I went with another European ex-Wolf. So yeah. I'm sorry, Nemanja.
Happy retirement to our guy Belly, but I'd give it like a 4. In that I thought that game 82 was just so bad in so many ways. I thought in the first game you could really tell that Karl was the wheels were spinning in real time of him constantly telling himself, make quick decisions, and he got off the ball really quickly. He played in the slots. He was setting a lot more screens up top than Rudy Gobert was, and then kind of, getting into that kind of short cornery area and just throwing rockets to Naz Reid and Rudy Gobert. I think 6 of his 8 assists in that first game were to either Naz or Rudy. So he did a really good job of finding the other bigs, and the spacing from the Timberwolves was a lot better in that game, I thought, and they just missed shots for the most part. But that second game was pretty bad in that it was a lot of drives that he should not have taken. He had, I think, 5 turnovers, tried to do way too much with the ball, tried to make some of these crazy passes that the Timberwolves didn't need. Didn't take great shots, didn't take enough threes, I thought, when every other part of his game was not working very well. And they got into more of those, nail post-ups 18 feet away from the basket, which I just don't think you can get into against a team like Phoenix. I think you've either got to get all the way down to the low block, or you've kind of got to get Cat in the short roll with him catching, with his momentum already going to the basket right around that free throw line. I don't think he can, get a lot of moment or, drive from a standstill a whole lot against this team. I think the way to beat the Suns is you've got to move the basketball. You've got to make extra passes and create open threes that way, and then attack overzealous closeouts rather than, catching the ball, holding it for a second or two, and then trying to drive on guys. It's just not going to work as well. So, but the good news is the Timberwolves have a full week of practice here where they know who they're playing. They know exactly what they're game planning for. And, the hope is that you can kind of show Karl, hey, you did it really well in the first game. You didn't do it very well in the second game. Let's focus on what went well, what you can do, and focusing on harnessing that and bringing it back for game 1.
Yeah, was someone going to chime in there? No? Okay, sorry. I think that I like the solutions-oriented approach here. Like, let's do a little more of that, starting with Ron. Like, what needs to change for the Timberwolves from the 3 regular season losses, where they lose by, I want to say 18, 19, and 10, double digits, all the losses, and some of them weren't even that close. What needs to be different in these postseason games, Ron?
Watch the Nuggets and do what they do on offense. And so it's not a knock on the Timberwolves. It just feels like at times, and I think we all feel it watching these games, when they're not getting buckets, it's a weird offensive set. Like, it's just like, it doesn't make sense. And like they're hoping for Mike Conley to hit a 3, or they're hoping for Anthony Edwards to take over and make a shot. But when they're not, then it's like, well, what do we do? And so if you watch the Nuggets, they slow the game down, get it back to Jokic, and then they start just making you chase their players. They run a ton of picks. You watch the Kings last night, similar. They knew Keegan Murray was hot. So what did they do? They start running sets to get him open. They start running backside picks and secondary picks where he's not the primary ball handler. They were without Malik Monk, and Fox said, you know what, let me take on the majority of the ball handling. So that's where the Timberwolves need to be smarter. Like, I just feel like you can't come down a stretch with a team like the Suns and miss 5 shots. You miss 5 shots, they're going to get 10 points, and they're going to take a 10-0 lead on you. And it's like, whoa, how did that happen? You have to, every other, if not every 3 times down, you can have a miss. But if it's every one or every other, you're going to lose. And so just more efficient sets. If it's getting the ball into the post to Karl-Anthony Towns, to slow it down a little bit. If it's letting Anthony Edwards go one-on-one with the guy he's killing. But whatever it is, find that efficient set and stick to it and be able to get back into it. Because sometimes in games, and I'm not nothing against D'Angelo Russell, but D'Angelo Russell seems to sometimes just run off his own whatever he wants to do. And that's why the Timberwolves haven't had that this season, other than the cat trying to go for 78 points. But besides that, they need to find efficiency every time down the court. So whatever it is, this is the time where, like in football, you run your best plays. You come out those first 15 plays in football in the playoff game, better be the best thing you've ever seen. And that's what this game needs to be. They need to come out early and just have efficient sets. But then when it gets, not say out of hand, but when it feels like the Suns are making a run, he's got to be able to say, hey, get to whatever it is, get to it, and then slow it down, run your play, because their bigs are better than the Suns' bigs. Their middle and their guards is kind of even, but Kevin Durant gives them a higher ability. But you got to get to better sets. And that's the thing. You can't be inefficient when the Suns are being efficient.
Yeah, like when the Suns shot well in 2 of the 3 meetings, the Wolves just couldn't keep up. I mean, the Suns shot 55% in the win back in November and 60% last Sunday. And in fact, the Suns had 2 of their 3 best 3-point shooting games in their whole season against the Timberwolves. So on one hand, I'm saying, all right, guys, let close out, right? Like, get to the perimeter, which is something the Wolves are extremely good at doing. So actually, it's almost encouraging to see how outliery some of those shooting performances were for the Suns, because it's unlikely that will continue over a 7-game series. It might in one game. There might be one hot Suns game where you do have to play catch up and you have to be dialed in and play your best offense. But Jack, I tend to think that, like you said, over a longer series, the law of averages will come into play, and the Suns aren't going to shoot 60% from 3 or better in all these games.
Yeah, no question. I think it mattered a little bit less, or at that point, I guess, mattered a little bit less in the final game, just because I think the Suns generated a lot more open shots in that game. So you'd expect them to shoot a higher percentage. But in those first 2 games, I mean, there were a lot of really tough shots that the Suns made that just continued to go down for them. And you'd expect that would kind of stabilize over the course of a series. But yeah, for me, it's just you can't take yourself out of the game in the first quarter. I mean, you talked about it earlier, Sam, with how big those 3 leads got in the first quarter, and then they've played pretty even basketball the final 3 quarters. And then I'd like to see them change up the defensive matchups. I think I don't know if the Wolves purposely didn't do this as much in that game 82 once they kind of thought they might lose the game because they didn't want to tip their cap for what they might do in the playoff series, which I totally respect. But Karl-Anthony Towns has to guard Kevin Durant. And I've watched a lot of the Suns this year, and Kevin Durant has honestly been a huge reason why this team has not performed as well as they should have. KD has been, he's obviously an all-time great player, but he takes so many just terrible, dumb shots, especially in the mid-range, that he just should not be taking, that, allows teams to turn a 4-0 run into a 9-0 run because he just comes down and takes 2 or 3 really dumb shots in a row. And I think you're not really all that worried about Kevin Durant blowing by Karl-Anthony Towns on the drive. And if he does, I guess shake his hand. And Rudy Gobert's back there waiting if Kevin Durant is able to get past him. But, we've seen Karl guard Grayson Allen in the matchup that we saw in game 82, that Karl guarding movement off-ball shooters where that's their primary role has never worked. Never has ever worked. So I don't know why they thought they could get away with doing that. And Mike Conley has to guard Grayson Allen. Or Nickeil Alexander-Walker has to play significantly more minutes because Mike Conley's been guarding Bradley Beal, and that's just been a complete matchup nightmare. And Bradley Beal's taken full advantage of that in the last 2 games. Conley this season has struggled a lot with bigger, more physical guards. We've seen in that Clippers series. The Clippers are a pretty similar team to the Phoenix Suns, and the Timberwolves have had a ton of success against the Clippers this season. And a big part of that is because Chris Finch was willing to put Nickeil Alexander-Walker in the game more over Mike Conley as another defensive option to guard James Harden when Harden was just too big and too physical for Mike Conley. So that's something that I think we might see a little bit more of in this series. And then, the Suns are going to they're going to sell out to take away Rudy Gobert on the roll. And it's going to be about how the Wolves find a counter to that. Is it going to be, they're going to be willing a little bit to go more small at certain points? If this is the case with Nurkic off the floor, maybe you run more spread pick and roll or pick and pop with Karl at the 5, so that if Karl catches the ball at the free throw line, we can see him spray the ball out to the corners more effectively than Rudy Gobert can. And maybe we see Naz Reid even at the 5 for stretches if Kevin Durant is going to be out there playing the backup 5 for Phoenix at different points. Just because if Naz Reid is the 5, then you can switch 1 through 5, and that would be kind of an interesting experiment that the Wolves could try against the Suns. But my biggest thing about these 2 teams is that the Timberwolves are a deeper team than the Suns are, and that the Timberwolves have more options available to them if option 1 or option 2 doesn't work out in terms of what's listed on the game plan there. Whereas if the Suns fastball, if they can't locate the fastball and they're not throwing the fastball by you, they don't have a whole lot of other pitches that they can turn to. And it's why you've seen the Suns really struggle against certain teams and really have success against certain teams this season. So it'll be interesting to see kind of how that, plays out when extrapolated over a 7-game series rather than an individual game sample.
And Jack, just curious who you see McDaniels guarding for the majority of this series. Quick answer.
Devin Booker, no question.
Okay.
I think it makes the most sense. Devin Booker struggled with length, and Jaden McDaniels has done a tremendous job on Booker for the majority of the series.
Interesting.
And then I'd see Ant guarding Bradley Beal.
Okay. Reggie, what do you got? Ways to fix the Phoenix problem?
Pray. Just pray.
Yeah, effective.
No, so what's funny is, and I've mentioned this before, one of my best friends lives in Phoenix and turned into a Suns fan several years ago, just kind of following the team a little bit closely. And I get a text from him maybe once a week. I hate this Suns team. He tells me that once a week. I hate this Suns team. He just doesn't think Frank Vogel was the right pick for head coach, and it's not working out. He doesn't feel like the players really care for Frank Vogel, and he doesn't feel like Frank really has an identity for the team on offense. It just kind of feels like, KD back in his OKC days. Just go get a bucket. Just go get a shot. We're not really running a whole lot of sets and rotations and all that. Just you guys are superstars. Just go get shots. And I think when it comes under a microscope in a series like this, I think that's when flaws tend to kind of rear an ugly head and get exposed. And so I think they have to continue to press on the defensive end. And I'm with Jack. Yeah, like you need your best defenders on their best offensive players. And I actually like the cat on KD thing. I think at this point in KD's career, yeah, he's not the blow by guy where he's just going to take Cat off the dribble and just go dunk on him. So I think that checks. But I also think, yeah, with Beal and Booker, Ant and McDaniels are your 2 best wing defenders. Like you have to employ those guys against those guys, which in turn, is probably going to make Ant a little bit more tired on the other end. But I think my key is for Ant to Like, this is his time to shine, man. Like, we can't have those performances where he just goes like the game 82 type performance that he had. Like, we can't have that from Ant if the Wolves actually really want to like do this thing and actually want to be taken as seriously as they want to be taken. And so like he's going to have to score 25, 30 a night and also really affect the team on the defensive end as well. Like, they're going to have his best performance. He's been chosen as one of the USA basketball players for the summer, and he's got to show why. You know, I think last year during the playoffs, he kind of ascended to that star status with his play, even though, you know, they dropped in 5 games to the Nuggets. And I think that just kind of ascended him. He got the contract, and he's kind of got the cachet now as like one of the alphas or the alpha on the Timberwolves, and he's got to play like it. They just can't have performances where he goes like, 1 for 6 from 3 or 6 for 20 from the field. Like, he has to be an efficient scorer. He has to not try to force things as much as he does and kind of let the game come to him, pick his spots when he wants to be aggressive. And he has to be the guy to lead them because, I think it's kind of difficult to want to expect too much from Cat coming off of that injury. You want him to play his best basketball as well. But like, this team goes as Ant leads them. Everybody knows it on the team. And I think Ant has to show that much.
Yeah, I think we've excused some of these lackluster Ant games with the belief that, well, come playoff time, the lights will go on and he's going to be dialed in because he has shown a proclivity to show up for the biggest games. He's been pretty good in the Grizzlies series and the Nuggets series last year. He's been good in a lot of big spots this year, but at times he does float through certain games, and we can't have that. You're right. We'll probably touch on Ant in our next segment where we unveil our key 3 performers for the Timberwolves playoff run after a quick word here on the Minnesota Basketball Party. Presented today by eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience. The formula for winning championships is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. All right, Minnesota Basketball Party here on Locked On Sports Minnesota. We've got the Minnesota Football Party returning tomorrow. The Tegna Roundtable with Julia Daniels, Reggie Wilson on Friday. It's great programming here. Please subscribe to Locked On Sports Minnesota. We would really appreciate that. Or hear us on the Locked On Wolves podcast feed. All right, let's kick it back to Ron Johnson. I want your key 3, Ron. 3 Timberwolves players that are pivotal to their playoff success. And if you could rank them from 3 to 1, that would be even better.
So 3 players that are pivotal to the success of the Timberwolves. 3. I'll go with Mike Conley. Mike Conley's ability to be a facilitator, a guy like we remember Tyus Jones when he was with the Memphis Grizzlies, or his ability to not have a bunch of like turnovers, his points to whatever, his efficiency on the court. Like, he was very good in that. That's where Mike Conley comes in. But also Mike Conley gets hot. He has to be able to knock down the open 3 if the Suns are going to do some kind of weird, like every time Anthony Edwards is driving, we're going to just double him, or every time Cat gets the ball, we're going to double him. Mike Conley has to be the guy that can knock down a 3 if they're leaving him open on some of those sets. So I go Mike Conley 3. 2, I'm going to go with Karl Anthony Towns. I really do. I think he cannot get into foul trouble. He cannot become a big baby. He cannot become a distraction, and he cannot be selfish. Karl-Anthony Towns has to be the consummate team player for this playoff series to work. And he also has to be the consummate contributor in every single game. He has to have impactful minutes and points on the floor every minute. And he cannot whine to the refs because it throws off the chemistry of the team. And then, of course, number one, I'm going to go with Anthony Edwards. Anthony Edwards is the key to this. It's time for him to take his Michael Jordan ascension. Everybody's been comparing him to Michael Jordan. Well, this is where you do it. Jordan, for years, has gotten beat up by the Celtics and the Pistons and the Lakers. When those guys got old, Jordan took over. It's time for Anthony Edwards to take over. And so he's number one for me.
I'm going to go number 3, Jaden McDaniels, because I think that him playing at a high level can push you over the top in so many ways and make up for deficiencies elsewhere. If he's efficient and defending well, he's a plus player. He's an asset to have on the floor versus he's missing open catch and shoot threes because he is going to be open. I mean, there's going to be so much attention on Ant. There's going to be attention on Cat. There's going to be opportunities for McDaniels to shine. If he does that, that's what gets you over the top. That's what helps you win comfortably, dare I say, versus having to sweat out every single game. Number 2, I think, is Rudy. Rudy has so much to prove. He was a high seed a number of times in Utah, and a lot of those teams failed in the first round. Rudy is still the anchor of this number 1 defense, and he's got a chip on his shoulder, I think, trying to reestablish or rebuild his playoff reputation. And number 1, I'm with Ron, it's Ant. I mean, they need Ant to have those quarters where he owns the game. He's the best player on the floor. He scores 18 points in a quarter. I want to see that on the regular in these playoffs. So McDaniels is my wild card, and then Rudy and Ant, my 2 and 1. Jack?
Yeah, I think for me, I left Ant off my list just because that was kind of an obvious one as an excuse to talk about some other guys. Number 3, I had Naz Reid. Like I said before, Naz Reid is a guy that has, for the majority of the season, really been helpful for the Timberwolves in that when one of the 2 guys has struggled, he has been there as kind of the backstop to help keep this team afloat. And he has not done that in any of the 3 games against the Suns. He's averaging 10 points a game on less than 40% shooting and 30% or 33% shooting from 3-point range. His plus minus in these 3 games, -5, -19, and -17. They've got to get more from Naz Reid, especially against Phoenix's bench crew in these games if they want to be able to win games. Number 2, I had Jaden McDaniels. If Jaden McDaniels is in foul trouble, this series becomes incredibly difficult for the Timberwolves to win. Straight up. I mean, Jaden McDaniels is a guy you can put him on Kevin Durant, you can put him on Devin Booker, you can put him on Bradley Beal, you can put him on Bol Bol when Bol Bol comes in the game and starts cooking off the bench. There's just so many different ways that you can deploy him defensively that makes him so valuable. And then Sam, like you talked about, I think if he's able to give them 15 points in 3 games this series, I think the Timberwolves are going to win the series. He absolutely has to find a way to punish Suns guards when the guards are going to defend him. I think he's shown some really good flashes over the last handful of games of the regular season. He's starting to make catch and shoot threes again after going through a 3 or 4 week stretch where he just couldn't hit the broadside of a barn from beyond the arc. So that's been really helpful. And then for me, it's Karl-Anthony Towns. There's no player in this series that is going to swing the series, in my opinion, Anthony Edwards included, that is going to swing the series more than Karl-Anthony Towns can. When Karl-Anthony Towns is playing poorly, it really detracts from everything that the Timberwolves are doing offensively and defensively. And when Karl-Anthony Towns is playing at the peak of his powers, the way that we have all seen him play so many times for so many years here in Minnesota, this team is so much more difficult to stop because the offense becomes more efficient and you're not just such a defensive team that you're able to not only just build leads with your defense, but then really extend them with your offense. And I think Karl presents a really difficult mismatch problem for the Suns in that, if he's able to take Kevin Durant into the post, Kevin Durant is really going to struggle to guard Karl-Anthony Towns. I think where Karl decides to generate his offense from is going to be arguably the biggest factor that determines this series. If he sticks to playing on the low post, where he is one of the best players in the NBA, and shoots threes and plays in pick and roll, I think the Timberwolves are going to be just fine offensively. But if he drives into crowds, if he posts up from the nail, if he posts up 17 feet away from the basket, I just think it's going to be really difficult for the Timberwolves to consistently score and to consistently move the ball. And we've seen how much easier it is for the Timberwolves to score when they've moved the ball really consistently, run a ton of pick and roll. When Karl went out, like I said earlier, did a really good job of fitting into the offensive structure in game 81, did not do that in game 82. So I think it's really going to be up to Karl to determine which player he wants to be, and which player the Timberwolves get out of Karl-Anthony Towns, I think will determine whether or not they advance past round one or they trade Karl-Anthony Towns as a result of losing in round one.
Yeah, that's the other subplot here. Like, could this be the final run for Cat in Minnesota? There's all this talk about the payroll being cut with A-Rod and Laurie, but they're not the owners yet. It's all very bizarre. Reggie, 3, 2, and 1.
Yeah, my number 3, I gotta go Ron Johnson. No, I'm just kidding. No, my number 3 is Naz Reid. We've seen Naz be a microwave when he comes off the bench and he's scoring efficiently. Like, it just seems like the team just does better when he comes off the bench and lights it up like that. And so I think he's kind of been trying to figure out, where he fits and how to get his game going with Cat back. And, hopefully he doesn't have those struggles moving forward in this series, or it's going to be tough for the Wolves. Number 2 is Cat. Just for most of everything that Jack said, I think that Cat has to be smart. Like, he just has to play his smartest, highest IQ basketball that he can play. And I also agree with Ron. And we mentioned this on the basketball party before. Like, if somehow the Wolves can take a page out of the Nuggets book, like, they run that pick and roll to perfection with Jokic and Murray with Denver. And if somehow they could try to figure that out with Cat and Ant, like, and it gets Cat better shots and he's not just driving and trying to force something, because it seems like whenever Cat drives, he like slows down so much and it's like he's walking in quicksand, and all of a sudden there's like 3 guys around him and he's still like, no, I'm just gonna try to put it up still. And it just doesn't work out. Either he draws a foul and now he's mad about the foul being called on him, or the shot doesn't fall and now the other team is off in transition. Like, that happens often with Cat. Like, if he can be a catch and shoot guy or find his spots on the floor and really get those high percentage shots up, like, this Wolves team is going to be all right. And then also number 1 is Ant, for all the reasons that I mentioned before. Like, this series is going to go as he leads them.
All right, we've got 2 minutes left. I want a quick series prediction. Jack Borman, lead us off. Wolves, Suns. I'm putting you on the spot.
I thought you would have had me go last just because you know where these two guys are going. I'm going to go Timberwolves in 7. I think the Wolves are due to have probably 2 games at least where the Suns just make everything that they throw up, whether it's good defense or bad defense. I think at least one of those will be in Phoenix. I think the Timberwolves will lose, 1 home game. I think they win 1 road game. I think it comes down to a game 7. And I think, like this crowd has been in some of these play-in games and playoff games the last 3 seasons, I just think that's going to will this team to get there. I think the Timberwolves defense is historically elite. It's probably one of the 10 best defenses of all time relative to the rest of the league that season. And I think that's really going to sustain. And I think that, you're going to see a game or 2 where the Suns really struggle to score 100 points, kind of like we saw against the Clippers. So I'm going to take the Wolves in 7.
Okay, Wolves in 7. Reggie, 15 seconds. Go.
I'm going to go Suns in 6, man. But I want to be a believer. I want Timberwolves. Make me believe. I want to believe.
Ron.
I'm going to go Timberwolves in 6. The only reason I'm doing is I'm looking at this. It's a +2 right now is what the Suns are. I think that's anybody's game to change it. So I feel like somebody for the Wolves is going to get hot. Anthony Edwards is going to take over. They're going to win in 6.
FanDuel has the Wolves as underdogs. I think that, the Wolves being swept That's not going to happen. They're not going to lose in 5. They're not going to lose in 6. This is Minnesota. It's going to be as gut-wrenching as possible. Devastating Game 7 loss for the Timberwolves. I hope I'm wrong. That's just what my spidey sense is telling me. I'm already dreading it. But that's the Minnesota basketball party. Enjoy the series. We'll be back on Wednesday to talk about games 1 and 2. So join us then here on Locked On Sports Minnesota. For Jack, Reggie, Ron, I'm Sam Ekstrom. Thanks for watching and listening on the Minnesota basketball party.